Knowing how to interact with a stranger doesn't always come naturally, which is why I thought it would be a good idea to talk about how to have a normal conversation in the only way I know how, which is through a 7-minute monologue. Reason being is pretty much whenever I go out in the real world, I say to myself, today is the day that a nice stranger might come up and have a conversation with me, and that's simply not a risk I'm willing to take. But despite my best efforts to look like this guy, I've realized that no matter how much you try to look like someone who just wants to go about their own business, the earbuds in, no eye contact strategy can only take you so far. As an example, I was in the elevator the other day taking my bicycle out, and this guy was like, "Nice bike. Is it fast?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, pretty fast." And then he said, "Probably not as fast as my car." And then he waddled out of the elevator on the wrong floor. And I was just standing there thinking, first of all, my legs are fucking massive, so check yourself. But second of all, what bothered me wasn't that what he said made no sense. It was that he didn't realize it made no sense. Like, that guy left the interaction thinking his smoldering Ryan Gosling impression left me trembling at his raw masculinity. When in reality, I left the interaction by going right back up to my apartment to Google small talk tutorials because he was so confident that I figured it must have been me who was missing something. And what I learned from that experience and the subsequent WikiHow articles is that when I talk to a stranger, I usually see it as a chance to screw things up, so I don't do it. And the guy talking to me in the elevator usually sees talking to a stranger as a chance to succeed and make everyone's day better. Chance, of course, being the operative word. Fortunately for me, what's made me feel a lot better is thinking, I remember all of my own blunders, but I never remember anyone else's. That means they probably remember their blunders and don't remember any of mine. And what really confirmed that theory was talking to a friend one time. I said, dude, I just can't stop worrying about what other people think of me. And he said, "Don't worry, man. No one thinks about you." And as an extension of believing you'll succeed or worrying you'll fail, what I've learned is that there are really two types of people you'll encounter. People who don't filter themselves enough, and people who filter themselves too much. And first of all, there's really only one type of person who has absolutely no filter, and society only tolerates them because we've all been there at one point or another. They can't walk in a straight line, they can't speak a coherent sentence, and they don't even remember any of it because their brain is so impaired. I'm of course talking about children. And while the solution of dealing with a child is of course alcohol, it is unfortunately the cause as well, so you have to be careful. Beyond that, in all other circumstances where someone still has no filter and just says whatever dumb shit comes to their mind no matter what, it's best just to say, "Thanks for the Twitch Prime," and move on. So the next scenario is when someone over-filters what they say and rarely talks. And most people think that what you're supposed to do here is ask the person questions to get them talking. This counterintuitively makes things worse and is like trying to get someone to open up and make friends by encouraging them to go to Toastmasters, because all that will do is make them even less cool. In my experience, what always works to help other people get out of their shell is a method called the 6 steps to social success. Step 1, never make the conversation the focus. Have an activity to do. 2, offer silence. It's okay not to talk. 3, help the conversation. When they do talk, say yes and rather than no but. 4, offer reassurance. Say things like, that's a really good way of saying it, and I'm having a really good time. 5, move to a new environment. Have a beer and show them that you want to keep hanging out. 6, open up. Test the waters by sharing stories about yourself to get them to start opening up as well. From here, continue to listen and maintain eye contact as you gently rest your hand on their thigh. You might have noticed this is just a WikiHow dating article that I copy-pasted, but then I modified it to work on guys. Similarly, a common piece of advice you hear on the internet is that you should listen more than you speak. And while this works great until you meet another person who also learns social skills by reading, you'll find that if all you do is ask questions and listen, people won't really make you their friend, but they will make you their therapist. And while it turns out that most people could definitely use one, it's not always so much fun for you. So I want to talk about some real conversation do's and don'ts that I've observed in actually socially competent people, and not ones I've seen on Reddit that are from the same 3 books. Do remember things about people. One of my best experiences is when a guy was like, "Hey man, good to see you again. I looked up your channel and liked a couple of videos, even sent one to a friend." And I was like, "Did you subscribe?" And he was like, "Of course." And just thinking about that story makes me feel good. I made it up obviously, but it still gets me through the day. Don't remember too much about people. Despite how much you think it might work, do not go up to your crush and say, I remember when I first saw you across campus, sitting in the cafeteria, the light of your silver necklace reflecting the harsh flicker of the power-saving LEDs beautifully through my 16 times optical zoom. I mean, it's kind of hot. Do have strong opinions. Don't share them at the wrong time. This is difficult because being indifferent is super boring, but sharing your strong opinions is definitely risky. A great example is my mom, actually. I'll be like, hey, Jan, how's your Airbnb going? And she'll be like, not good, Jamie. Guess where my guests for the next 3 days are from. And I'll be like, where? And she'll be like, South Korea. And I'll say, what's wrong with that? I love StarCraft. And she'll say, they don't even speak English, Jamie. It disgusts me. And I'll be thinking, oh no, here we go. But then she'll be like, how am I supposed to have them for dinner and wine to ask about their culture if we can't even communicate? I'll have to take Korean on Duolingo. And I'll be thinking, oh, that's nice of you. I wasn't expect. That's why the Americans should have never left in 1953. And you know, classic Jan. And while I do try to listen more than I speak in this case, I do enjoy that I never know if she's inviting me for dinner or to throw a body in the Atlantic. Do amuse yourself. This one is pretty important because it means that no matter how lame everyone else is, at the very least you're going to be entertained by yourself. And with the exception of the guy in the elevator, it's almost always the case that when someone is self-amused, other people find them interesting as well. Take kids as an example. They're off in their own little world, minding their own business as the adults talk. But then when you look over and see one of them trying to figure out which Lego block tastes the best, you can't help but be amused yourself and think, poor thing must have been vaccinated. Finally, the best conversation tip that I've noticed in only the most socially competent individuals is that what you actually say doesn't matter at all, because again, no one actually remembers what you say. And when I think about who I like hanging out with the most, they don't say a word the whole time, and pretty much all they do is act happy to see me and fetch tennis balls when I throw them. I'm of course talking about Roger Federer. But actually though, it made me realize, who gets the girls at parties? This guy. Who gets the guys at parties? This guy. Who makes friends every time they leave the house? This guy. Who remembers you? This guy. Who has strong opinions on the Korean War but knows when to share them? This guy. Who amuses themselves? This guy. And ultimately, who would you prefer to see in an elevator rather than Subaru Forester guy? That's right. Pretty much anyone.